Shabbat Shalom. So I would like to just take a little time this morning and make some comments. Today is a Parsha. Every Saturday is a Parsha. They're really great to read because you can be reading through the whole 5 books of Moshe this way every year, which helps to keep you totally Torah-centric in your studies. And also it does help to be on a sense of unity. This is one of the great unifiers between the two houses as we all come back and start reading the same scriptural understandings every week, the Parsha. I can just imagine seriously in the spiritual realms what that is doing, as we are all at least focused in the same way on the same text. That is a lot of opportunity for the Ruach to bring some unity and some harmony and some understanding to our hearts and minds. So what I wanted to say, though, when people who follow the Parshas after a while, they'll say, it always reflects light. It's like whatever's going on in my life or in the world, it's always being reflected. And it's so true. And this could not be more true. This week's Parsha, which is called Mishpatim, if I'm saying that correctly, Parsha Mitzpatim, which is basically Exodus 21 to 24. And it falls right on the heels of what they call Parsha Jethro. Now, these have names. We could just take quick. They all start, they name the Parsha portion according to the first word of that. And the first word of this Parsha is, and I think Yah gave more laws, and God gave more laws. This comes right on the heels of the 10 Commandments. The covenant and Sinai, signed and sealed, I'll get into the second, on the 10 Commandments. This is the part of the covenant at Sinai. The second part of it, there's actually another whole little addendum that most of the Christian world does not really focus on and understand enough, which is in chapters 21 through 24, which when the Torah sages finished the exegesis of that chapter, they come up with what is called the 613 mitzvahs. There's the commandments. See, the thing is, when the Father, I always say, when he calls you, he will equip you. He called us to walk before him in purity, in holiness, in righteousness. He's going to tell us what that looks like. We shouldn't play stupid and act like, well, I don't know. Of course we know. That's what the Torah is all about. It's called instruction. He will tell us exactly what good behavior is and bad behavior, what his laws encompass. And this is very well spelled out. But unfortunately, most Christians, we have this attitude about, quote unquote, the law. We really do. And it is 100%. And I say this unequivocally. I say this in love and humility because I once was there. And it's really based on pure ignorance. It's based on wrong teaching. It's based on a verse out of Hosea where he says, you have inherited lies from your fathers. Unfortunately, much of what got is handed down to us in Christianity is not really Hebrew-centric. It's really not Torah-centric. It's really Greek or Western, has tons of other, even pagan influences in it. And while this can be a hard not for some to swallow, this is what it means to, quote unquote, to wake up and to realize that somewhere along the line, we got ungrafted again from the tree, the root system, the Hebrew root system that was already growing for thousands of years, which Yeshua was totally born into, that lineage, that heritage, that worldview, that religion, that prophecy, whatever you want to say about it. But this one, and more laws, is because and is a vav. In the Torah, sometimes they'll use the vav, the letter. Vav is 6th letter, and it can mean like and. So we would write on and, but a lot of times in the Torah, they'll put a vav, and it's like they'll say a bunch of stuff, and they'll put a vav in there, and then they'll say a bunch more stuff, and they'll put another and. So it's a conjunctor. It means and. So in Jethro, he gave us the 10 commandments. The Father spelled out very clearly and dramatically with thunder and lightning and all sorts of bells and whistles, his quote unquote 10 commandments. Okay. And then in this Parsha, he spells out, in case you didn't get it, in detail, quote unquote, the nitty gritty of what the law looks like. This is what justice, the weightier matters of the law is what he wants us to focus on. Okay. Because if you don't have what's just in the situation, the weightier matter, then the details don't matter, because the details will be unjust anyways. If the verdict starts at the top, does not start out with a balance that is, with a weight system that's balanced. So if you cross this way or you cross this way, okay, there has to be a standard etched in stone. That's what the Torah is giving us. That's what the law is giving us. Let me just go back to that concept again. The law, you understand, from a Hebraic mindset, and it's all about the Hebrew people. That is the DNA of creation. Oh, because I'm not so focused on it. It came into my mind. I'm going to say this. You know, I do want to say that I have gone to the paid subscription channel, the Linktree. You can find me at Linktree, The Elect Life, or on my website, The Elect Life, which you'll find the Linktree, which is now where I'm putting all of my teachings. And I do have a very exciting developing paid subscription teaching base with over 20 weeks now of up to 3 videos a week, teachings really in depth on a lot of this. So that's where I'm moving in. And if you'd like to, it's $25 a month. It's not a big deal. It's super, super easy. Go to theelectlife.org, click Linktree and sign up today. It's a lot of great stuff there. But this concept of today's Parsha on the law is so germane. It doesn't, there's no mystery about it. Okay, the point. But this is a huge part of Torah, is the law. And I always say, well, I teach the mysteries. I like to do the mysteries and the deeper understandings and the metaphysics and about creation and everything that's coded into the Torah, which it is. But there's a level called the Drash. Remember, when you teach out of parts, you've got the Peshat level, which plain meaning, you've got a Remez, which is hinting to all this deeper stuff. And then you've got, quote unquote, this area called the Drash, the law. So let's make no mistake about it. Yahweh has laws. There are 10 Hebrew words for law in Hebrew. They don't, like, you got ordinance, statute, commandments. There's the ritual laws. There's different things, but there's over 10 Hebrew words. And I don't have my little cheat sheet in front of me to tell you. But in Greek, unfortunately, as I said, we only had one word, nous, N-O-U-S. And so it's like, again, we're at a linguistic disadvantage because it's very difficult to communicate 10 Hebrew words worth of nuance with just one Greek word. See, this is why we're always at a disadvantage. I tell everybody, if you have an understanding, to really try to orientate yourself back into the Hebrew understanding. Check your words in the Hebrew, check your root, you know, your root, 3-letter roots in words and stuff, to become familiar with that whole way, because that's where you'll find the true Hebraic meaning, not something that's been Hellenized or something that has been taken out of context. Okay, we really just have to go back to that. But back to this Parsha, because I reread this morning, and if you've never done this, I encourage you, you need to do this, Christian, with an open mind and with an understanding that humility means, you know, maybe I don't know everything. Whatever. Let God, if you think you know everything, then there's no room for God to teach you anything new. You might as well just shut your Bible and walk away. Go be a car mechanic or something. Go find something else on Google. You know, you can learn to do anything on Google today, right? But if you want to learn about God in the Bible and how to follow him, then you have to stay with the Torah, and you have to obey it. He's very clear. If you love me, you will obey me. If you've signed on to the program, you want to follow me, well, there are rules of engagement. It's a very clear contract. But when he did this whole story with right now in the birthing of the nation, the 12-tribe nation of Israel into a visible unit that will govern itself in all ways, judicially, in its interactions with itself and the nations, with its laws, it will govern itself according to this Torah that was received on Mount Sinai. And if Yahweh's going to call them to be a righteous people, a holy nation full of priests, then he's going to have to give them the equipping. How are they going to be that way? And he did. He gave them their Torah. But when you go to the 10 Commandments, which, you know, again, and I do want to, it's like everything in Hebrew is a subset. So while there may be 10 overarching kind of classifications for sin, for behavior, both good and bad, because there's good commandments and quote unquote there's, you know, bad commandments, things to tell you stay away from, but they all stack. So by the time we get to the next chapter or the next parsha, and after he's given them the 10 commandments, and then he goes on to say, and I've got a whole bunch more for you. And he lays out all these very specific commandments. I mean, you really should read Exodus 21 through 24 with an open heart, and then go and Google. I don't have to do this with just Google the 613 commandments. Okay, find a Jewish site, and then just list them. Okay, and this is the great work of the sages, where they have been able to go into these chapters and literally list and pull out, according to him, in finite detail, every commandment or everything that the Father is telling us to do, because it's for our good. All right, it's not because he's good. It is no other reason that it's for our good, so that we can be a people, a good people, a righteous people, a powerful people, a healthy people, a people with whose God can back them up because they're living righteously. All right, so it's really important. But this is the base of Western civilization, people. This is the chapter. This is what the Jews have been. They're one of their great gifts, of many gifts to the nations, is this understanding of law and how to subcategory. So, like, this, even in murder, thou shalt not murder. Let's say it's this container, the biggest one, but there's all these subcategories. Intended, unintended. Murdering in war, there's different whole laws, there's things that govern different circumstances. So they really do ferret it out, categorize it. And so in these 630 commands, you're going to find, well, and actually you'll really see it, you'll see it in chapters, especially in 22 and 23. These 613 mitzvahs are in there, but they include all these details of, like, the sabbatical year, the Shemitas, how to keep these, the 3 pilgrimage feasts, how to do ritual worship, much of it judicial procedure, lending money, how to usury. It covers so much. Laws of theft and then damages, laws about libel, laws about hired servants, how you should treat, quote unquote, your workers. Laws about sexual purity or relationships amongst people, what is accepted and not. It's extremely explicit. And if you remember in the story too, this is Moshe, he is, and that's why he's called the lawgiver. Nobody received this level of law giving. Okay, how to be this nation of priests. Christian, what's the point of thinking you're now a nation of priests if you don't even know the laws of your own nation, so to speak? Okay, it's not that simple. Okay, and it's very necessary to have people that will, quote unquote, split the hairs on this stuff. Because first of all, Yahweh sent us the example, because he did. He took those 10 commandments, and he, as Moshe was, had all these couple million people around him that now wanted to live this way, but like had a million questions. Like, okay, how do we do this? And how do we do this? And how does this look? And how does this work? And he's going crazy. And Jethro comes, the father-in-law, and he says, okay, you got it, Moshe. I understand you got, but you gotta delegate. You got to teach these elders, the people. You got to teach this. You've got to institute institutions that will institutionalize for you these laws and to codify them, to use them justly for the people. And of course, we know that Moshe, being the most humble man, well, received that good advice and did that, which was the Father's plan. He was probably so overwhelmed. Well, it's funny to read into it, the person. I wasn't in any of their brains, so I really should read into it what they were personally feeling or thinking. But the point is, after this all happened and all the basic stipulations got out there was over and over and over again through this whole process, the Father kept saying, now look at what I'm telling you. These are lasting ordinances. This is something Ephraim really needs to hear, because we've done this, what do they call that? Dissident. This where you just sort of turn something off in your brain, where whenever we hear the law but we just sort of shut it down. We don't keep thinking critically. You have to hear an argument, you have to see all the way through, and you have to hear all the different parts, like the legal arts, why is that a valid? We are still under, quote unquote, the law. Yahweh doesn't change. Murder is still murder. You cannot go into the streets and just indiscriminately murder. Okay. Well, you can, and people do it all the time, actually. But the point is, in a just society, there is what is called the law to be used quite strictly against that, quote unquote, evildoer. Okay. So you have to have, every just society has to have rules of the game that the populace basically agrees on. And every single person that stood on Sinai said, we will do and we will hear all that God commands, over and over and over and over in the story. And any Christian to really sit down and just read it and understand that we are part of that group of people, our offspring, our genetics. There's no way mathematically, when Yahweh says that he's going to spread the seed of Abraham to be like the stars of the sky, there's a lot of people that we are the seed, we are part of this offspring that stood and made a covenant, which it says is for us and for all generations to come. I mean, it's kind of sobering. You just have to read it at face value. It is a covenant. It's for all the generations of all the offsprings to come. So when you get into the story of Yeshua and the whole bit, when you really see it and understand the light that he made a renewed covenant, he renewed the covenant again with the house of Israel, the northern kingdom, because he had divorced them. It's all in the story. It's all in the Torah. That now it begins to make sense. And we have never come back, Christian. This was the whole point, that we got so derailed so early on by about 200, AD, that we lost this essential ingredient. We lost our rod. We've never lost faith that Yahweh is our shepherd. He loves us. He came for us. But we lost the rod, our rod, which is a rod of authority. All right. So we all said that we would do and we will hear all that God commands, and that all our generations would hear and would do this. This is what we pledged to Yahweh. And it says, and for over and over in Leviticus 3:17, Leviticus 22:3, Leviticus 23:31, Exodus 31:13, Exodus 12:4, Exodus 12:17. These are all saying that these are lasting ordinances for all the generations to come. It says it is a statute for all the generations to come, over and over. So for us to be in this situation where we are and not know what it means, see, because this is not the first time that Israel or Judah has been in this predicament where we're living in a lawless society. Everything they want to tell us today is no, there is no standard. It's all, circumstantial. Do as thou wilt. You're a law unto yourself. Basically, it's where they want to bring us. They are attacking at every level. And by they, the wicked, people who are God haters, God deniers, people who are in our legislative authority, who have the authority to legislate because we elected them, who are God deniers. I mean, that's really crazy when you think about it, how we got to that level, because that is not how we founded this nation. We were very cognizant of the fact that your lawmakers better be godly people, otherwise they won't make godly laws. So that's exactly what we're seeing today. But in order for this, so we need to come back, because I will tell you, it's so interesting. When you read the 613 mitzvahs, and if you've never read it, be ready to be a little bit shocked at a lot of what's in it, because it absolutely spells out unequivocally what, homosexual acts, I'm sorry, are not permitted in Torah. Having sex with your animal is not permitted in Torah. I mean, some of this stuff, it's unequivocal. It's very clear. Okay, so in case you didn't get it in the 10, let me spell it out for you a little more. You're not supposed to dress in men's clothing. Women are not supposed to dress in men's clothing. Men are not supposed to dress in women's clothing. But one of them, the number 121, really struck me, because it said one of the commandments is for Yahweh's people to afflict and to call out to Yah in times of a catastrophe. Now, to repent, the better word would be to repent and call out to Yah in times of a catastrophe. That's not even, you might say, well, that's just kind of the smart thing to do. That's a commandment, people. And how stiff-necked and stubborn have we been that we will not collectively humble ourselves and say we are at a crossroads where we do not have the rod and the staff we need to lean upon to give us the teeth we need today to speak with authority to this, really to these bureaucrats. The biggest problem are bureaucrats and unelected egotists who are trying to completely control the narrative and derail the foundations of this nation. Now, that's really obvious. Okay, but in order to reverse that, the first thing that we're going to have to do, we're going to have to call out, because there is a more catastrophe coming. Anybody who thinks that, COVID was just a little blip on the radar, that life, no, life is going to change again very soon on a dime again. This thing is only going to go, from bad to worse as we reap in the world, in nature, in human behavior, in the finances, in every way where we transgressed Yah's laws. We're going to reap as you sow, and it's not going to be pretty. The only safe place are for those who are the elect, those who have oil in their lamp, who are hanging out in the tree of life, who understand where to find their safety. In the angel of the Lord, who covered them with a covering, a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night to completely cover and protect them. But once we do cry out in this catastrophe, because like I said, this is the whole point, where it's going to get worse and worse. Lawlessness is only going to hurt and burn up the lawless, okay? And it is only going to be alleviated when we acknowledge our sins, because that's the way the law works. If you obey me, you get blessings. If you disobey me, you get curses. As long as the majority of the population in this country just ignores God, or, just has no respect for Torah, has no intention of even examining themselves against just 2 chapters in Exodus to see. But the point I just want to make also is that besides being a lasting ordinances, these are the only ways that society can function. You have to have, and this is what, people who are of a sound mind today will be saying, you need laws, you need just laws, you need just judges who are not prone to bribery. And even in the 161, in the 613 minutes, it talks very severely about bribery in all different levels amongst different groups, right? And you have to have courts of law to try the evildoer. Now, this is not even anything that's new. See, this is what a biblically illiterate, it's sad, generation we are, because even this is one of the Noahide laws. One of the 7 Noahide laws. Noah made a covenant, God, Yahweh, made a covenant with Noah, and Noah is the progenitor. Forget Adam, that we got wiped out, of all men on the face of the earth, men, women, and children, and all inclusive now. Okay, so here we have all the children of Noah, and there was a covenant of ethical behavior the father made with those people and all their descendants. See, he's just got to kind of renew these things. But this time he upped the ante. The whole point with the nation of Israel, yes, they have a lot more laws they got to follow per se, because they took upon themselves this concept of the Torah. They took upon themselves as a people, like, okay, we will carry your law. It's like, we will carry it for generation, we'll record it, we'll keep it, we'll preserve it, we'll teach it to our children, when we lie down, when we rise up, when we walk along the way, okay? And we will teach to the nations. And so in order to do that, it was a heavier load, and there's heavier blessings for it, but there's heavier responsibility. Too much has been given, much shall be required. But it's not, these 613 mitzvahs are pretty nitty gritty, and they are there to help us understand. And one of the things I want to say is this is again, and I do think that the idea of the Sanhedrin, this concept of ruling elders coming back and making these rulings. See, in order to make a just decision, it isn't like you just willy-nilly, you just think of something. Oh, okay, I heard your view, I heard your point. Oh, okay, I think that sounds good. No, see, you don't understand how, in the Jewish mindset, nothing's willy, everything is very laid out procedurally. Even arguments, the rabbis will lay out, okay, this is how in this situation to go, in this situation, and they lay it all out, and they try to find, this is what it means, binding and loosing. Because in every generation, Satan attacks us. He just changes the term, so to speak, because he can control the culture so much more and the narrative and stuff. He just changes up what the sin of the generation is. Okay, I mean, we don't pursue people in armies, in chariots anymore. So obviously that's not going to be, but we still pursue people. That's the point. So what is, in all these ways, even in the acts of war, what's just, what's unjust? So I guess my whole point that I want to make with people is, Ephraim, and I say Ephraim, I mean Christianity. I mean, it's getting very late in the game, because I do believe these are the three takeaways. I believe that our only safety net to be holy and please Yahweh and walk in his ways is to know the Torah and to know the 613 mitzvahs. Now, I'll give you a little secret. You don't know this. Don't get all upset, because yes, there's 10 commandments and they're binding, and one of them is to keep the Sabbath. I mean, they're there. These are inconvenient truths that we've sort of gotten talked out of. But the other thing is, then you break it down to 613 mitzvahs out of that. But out of that, let's say, because the true Torah sages that study, read it, say most people, we can only fulfill about 30% of these, give or take, because a lot of them have to do with, like if there's a temple and when the temple's there, these are the laws, like the pilgrimage feast. Nobody can do those, go to Jerusalem to do them, because there's no temple. A lot of these, so there's a lot of them that are culturally and time sensitive that we cannot do anymore. But the core understanding doesn't mean you throw the essence out, because in the millennium, we will all go back down to the festivals 3 times a year. That will be that commandment will be reinstituted. It didn't, and it's not a made up one. It was already in the Torah, and it's just going to be reinstituted again, because there will be a temple again in Jerusalem, and there will be a king, and there will be a priestly service. So it's all going to be reestablished. But I think that we have to do this, because I see no way out of this. These lawless ones that do have the upper hand in the narrative and a lot of power and negative energy behind them right now are going to ride their little wave to the end. And the only way that we are going to be able to protect ourselves, our cities, our towns, our country, is to be able to enforce the law, the just laws that we have, to believe it, to understand it, that it is right, and to come back to living these ourselves. Because when you live to the best of your ability under the sanctioned lifestyle laws, whether they're eating, whether they're on sexual morality, whether they're on how you clothe yourself, how you treat your parents, how you live in relationship with your worker. These things are already like nothing new under the sun. So instead of making stuff up or pretending, kind of that something's going to change, no, we have to change. We have to implement, because we are Yah's priests. And I do believe that the elect are the priests, that we do have the authority, but we ourselves have to, number one, be knowledgeable, up to speed. We have to know what applies. We have to do it in mercy, in mercy and in justice. And we have to be in a humble attitude before the Father and realize that this is his way, so that we can all live in this peaceable kingdom. So I just think that's interesting, because that's my 2 cents for the week. And there are more laws, and it's time for Ephraim to get on the page of what it means to really follow Torah. Hope it don't get me in a lot of trouble. Blessings on everyone. Shalom, shalom.